7-Eleven, good morning. Welcome into Wingin' It Wednesday, this June 13th, 2018, and the gang is all here. Warren, welcome back from your self-imposed punishment.
It wasn't punishment.
What? I want to ask you what you were doing last week.
Well, I went to Argentina.
Okay.
Your hair is very lush.
That's right.
Happy belated birthday to Stafford, who celebrated yesterday.
Thank you.
He brought in some of his goodies today, so that's the only reason we even knew.
He's the cool kid in the class.
Facebook didn't tell me yesterday, so.
I marked it all over the calendars here. Every calendar in the building has Stafford's birthday on. But nobody knows who I am.
Well, I talked about paying to the patron saint of interviews, St. Terry Huval, yesterday. Because I told you I had the situation where Stafford and I live in the general vicinity of each other, and my internet line was cut. Okay, there was some construction going on, so I kind of walked up, not being the nicest guy, not in the best mood, about to be like, man, y'all cut a line, did you not see whatever? And when they said they were contractors for LES Fiber, I almost said, don't go back and plug in the old stuff. Let's just look ahead.
There was rejoicing.
Welcome in to Carol, Warren, and Stafford, all here. All right, so we are going ahead for the third special session. Seems like the 700th special session, but it's going to start on Monday. And we heard yesterday that a lot of the leadership in the legislature wants to have what do they call it, a deal in principle, an agreement in principle before it starts on Monday. Carol, do you think it's going to be that easy?
So, I said this on my show. Would Trump and Kim come to an agreement before the legislature and the governor? And I think they did.
Oh, gosh.
Look, now we have an agreement coming between the legislature and the governor. Will they come to an agreement? Well, as long as the governor keeps throwing out, the nursing home people are going to get thrown out, the health care is going to be shut down, and now it's food stamps. So what else is he going to pull out of his little bag of tricks to scare people with? I hope that this is a move in the right direction. So they need to compromise. The governor wanted 0.5 cent. The House wanted 0 increase in taxes. They wanted some tax reform, some budget reforms. So they held their noses, the conservatives in the House held their noses, gave him a third penny, and it still wasn't good enough for him. And they covered just about everything they needed to cover. There were some things that had to be cut. But my goodness, if you look at the increase in the health department, I've said this a gajillion times because it's true. He took it from $9 billion in the health department to $13.5 billion with his Medicaid expansion. And let us remember, in terms of food stamps, who took away the work requirement for food stamps. Able-bodied people had a work requirement until this governor came in, and he did away with it immediately, which immediately pumped up the number of people who get food stamps. Same thing with Medicaid. People who had insurance got off of the insurance and went on to the state Medicaid thing, which expanded it greatly from $9 billion to $13.5 billion. With the 10% that everybody agrees is waste, fraud, and abuse in the Medicaid program, they could have solved this debt problem immediately by just reining in halfway that Medicaid expansion.
So it seems like when we're talking about the food stamp benefits, part of the issue was the governor had to find a certain amount of money in state funding for the federal match. When we talked to Senator John Kennedy a couple of days ago, he said, gosh, if in this budget that's so big, we can't find that little bit of amount.
Exactly.
That's kind of the question. Stafford, do you think this is just another chapter in this long story, or is it really showing some gaping holes in how things are run?
So I think it's another chapter in the long story. Look, if you look at the news cycle over the past couple of weeks, right, the hospital lobby went out and did their job to make sure that they were covered in the press and pressured the governor to send out layoff notices and everything else and managed to get their funding covered, right? The budget, when it was passed, noted that if it didn't get fully funded, what areas that potentially could be cut, right? So, a week and a half ago, we saw the prisons come out and say, if we're not fully funded, we're going to have to release 10,000 inmates. So now we're seeing our services group come out and say we might have to potentially cut funding for food stamps. I think what this is kind of by design for the legislature to have some marketing materials or something to talk about in each group so that the tax increase that they're going to pass is a little bit easier to swallow, so that people understand what services are going to be cut if it doesn't get passed, right? So I'm not going to put this one on the governor. I think this one's kind of on everybody across the board. We have to fund government. We need to stop giving away so much of our money. We need and look, what's disappointing to me is that every single constitutional convention bill that we had there failed. It's time for the legislature to start doing the hard work, and the hard work is getting back to a system that works and something that where we can cut evenly across the board when the economy goes to crap like it's gone down here.
Warren, your thoughts?
First thing I would ask is, when did the legislature ever do the hard work in Louisiana? And in most of these states, too, those political bodies, they've sat there and just kicked the can down the road and just, on and on and on, the same old thing. And with this governor, I think the legislature has at least started somewhat becoming a body of its own. For so long, in so many of these states where you had a powerful governor, that the legislature was just a rubber stamp body for whatever the governor wanted. And most of the southern states have transformed themselves and got out from under that way of working long ago. And Louisiana is trying to, and it sort of has up to a certain point, but we still have a long ways to go. When John Bell Edwards got elected, he got elected on the promise that he was, the honor code, honesty and trust and goodwill and all of that. And then he comes in there and he proves that he's everything opposite of what he said he was when he ran. And I think that is the most disheartening thing about it. And so his deal is, it doesn't give a damn about anything except getting more money into the state. And how much can we grow state government? How much can we increase taxes? And if you look at it, virtually every problem we face in this state originated in the legislature and in the office of the governor throughout the years. And that we have problems out there that nobody is addressing, trying to solve the problems. It's just trying to keep doing the same old thing over and over, but if you would just give us more money, that everything will be rosy. The bad thing about all of this is the economy is coming back. And as the economy comes back, the Louisiana coffers will start to be full again. And that's where the troubling part is. It's going to come down to it and say, see, I did it, and that's the furthest thing.
And they'll be off the hook and they won't fix anything again.
Carol, I want to ask you about, how this budget passed, but the second part of it did, how to pay for it didn't. When we talked to, I believe it was, State Senator Page Cortez, and he talked about one of the options that would be on the table is the end of year cuts, where it would go ahead and go through, you wouldn't fill it right now, and you would hope that over the course of the year, as Warren said, the economy does well, maybe we beat projections, and then you make the cuts on the back end. That scares me to death, because that basically sets us up for the same exact thing we're doing right now, right?
Yes, exactly. It just changes the timing.
Yeah.
When do you want to go over the cliff, now or later? I mean, basically it just changes the timing, which I wouldn't expect anything different from our state senator.
Yeah, or ruin Christmas, whichever one you want to do.
Let me tell you, if they wanted to come down to it, and you can go through every department of government, and they will hold on to their funding. Mm-hmm. They will pad the funding. They will say this is absolutely critical. They'll buy furniture that's not necessary. They'll do anything to make sure that they don't get cut from the year before. But in every department of government, there's a little bit that could be cut, without hurting anything.
Stafford, do you want to wrap this one up for us?
Yeah, I've more made a phenomenal point that I think that's relative to this. The reason that we're in this situation, not just because of our spending, but because of the way that we raise taxes. We do everything. A lot of our money comes from consumption taxes in the form of sales tax, and we've backed off. We're low nationwide on property taxes, and then Lafayette's low in that list as well. And so when the economy does come back, we have to find a way that balances, that makes sense, right? Something that's not so heavy in one area at the neglect of another, because the economy is not always going to be good. It is going to go down, and it is going to have its high times. So we need to find a good balance of both.
Well, there have been several studies done legislatively. The governors back and forth have authorized these studies, and nobody pays attention to the outcome of the studies. And there's some reasonable approaches to this, but nobody pays attention to it because It has to be a balanced approach. If it's not a balanced approach, then it goes out of kilter as it is right now, and nobody wants to do that. The hard work. Yeah, there has been hard work done in the past, but it's usually when the economy comes back, then we forget about all that hard work and we just give out more money and take the easy way out. Let's kick this can down the road for somebody else.
Yeah, but look, when the economy is bad, the economy is bad. You know, that if you don't have the money to spend on sales taxes, you still don't have the money to pay property tax. So, I mean, you know, taxing is taxing. And that I will agree that there are different ways to go about doing it, and that, you know, that we're lopsided, well, we're backwards. Everything is turned upside down, just like it is here in Lafayette Parish. All right, said enough.
All right. And look, I remember towards the end of Jindal's time, he made a genuine effort to do tax reform in Louisiana, and it fell flat on its face. So it's and I don't even remember what his proposal was, but I'm just saying every time we go to discuss these hard things, somebody throws a flag up and goes, I can't support that because of X, when we need to compromise a little bit more.
Well, you know what? You have a lot of people in office. I remember the big fiscal reform push during the Romer administration in 1989, and I remember that because my husband was all over the state talking about fiscal reform. And you know what they threw out? They're going to take away your homestead exemption. Homestead exemption was never in there. The state really doesn't have standing in terms of homestead exemption parish by parish.
Social Security.
Oh, yeah, exactly. I mean, it was scare tactics all over the place. And guess who led the charge on that one? The assessors.
I got to make one statement, Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind. I'd like to move.
Well, since you called me chairman, I
would like to move that the 7-second delay button be used anytime the name of the former governor BJ is mentioned.
Okay, yes. So we'll try not to do that.
That's a pretty offensive word to a lot of people.
7:22. We move on to the Trump-Kim summit that happened in Singapore. Everyone's gone from that. Trump is home, and the tweeting has restarted. 7:23 now.
Compared to this one, are you serious? A lot of people would take it back right now.
Right now, no traffic crashes, no breakdowns to report to you. Make sure that you're buckling up and that you're keeping it safe out there today. Traffic brought to you by Compassion International. Food, water, education, and more is what you can give to a child in poverty. Release a child from poverty at compassion.com/radio. So I don't have to hear it. Okay. All right. Right now, no traffic crashes, no breakdowns to worry about. Make sure that you're buckling up and that you're keeping it safe out there. If you do see trouble, give us a call at 237-KTDY. That's your up-to-the-minute traffic report. I'm Bernadette Lee.
7:26 now at News Talk 96.5 KPEL. Wingin' It Wednesday, the official debate show of the Jesus Jet. Brought to you by LABI.
Jetting for Jesus, baby. Jetting for Jesus.
Okay, well, there was a lot of jetting going on considering how long the flight was from the United States to Singapore. I think it ends up being a total of about 26 hours of total flying when you stop to refuel and everything else. I told Bernie, nope, that's not a vacation spot for me. If I'm being paid to go cover this somewhere else, fine, but 26 hours is just too far away.
Especially if you're just a regular old coach.
Especially if you're in economy comfort, it's still too long. Okay, so we know that Trump is back home, Kim is back home. Lots of little sidebar stories which have been interesting, to say the least. Kim bringing his own bathroom facilities with him. That's interesting. The flight taking an extra 10 hours for Kim because he didn't want to fly over water. So they flew over Beijing, which is kind of a roundabout way to just fly over the most land. I don't know. There's been a lot of weird things. But has any progress been made on this? And people are on both sides of this issue. Some surprisingly, considering what party affiliation they are. A lot of different feelings. Stafford, we'll start with you.
So I am rooting for this to work. I genuinely want Kim Jong-un to find a way to step down. And for the Koreas to be reunited within my lifetime. I hope that we find a way to do that. That being said, what happened yesterday is tough to look at because you had two people in the room with the translators only, right? And they signed a joint statement that had a couple of bullet points, which was all stuff that North Korea had already agreed to in the past. And Then now on state media, they're reporting that Trump has agreed in North Korea. They're running propaganda in North Korea, which we don't even know if it's propaganda because there's no record of the meeting. Nobody sat there and took notes. There's no recording of it. So
Except we do know the history of the state media. They're not going to say anything that's detrimental to Kim.
And look, Kim could have gone back and said, hey, nobody was there to record it, so let's say he agreed to these 10 things, right? And one of the things that they're reporting is that we lifted sanctions. And that, Carol, you can shake your head. State-run media in North Korea is claiming that Trump agreed to lift sanctions.
But Trump has said that we didn't.
He said that we didn't.
Yeah.
But there's a danger to not having that person there, right? Look, I don't know what's going to happen with this. I hope that it all works out. But I don't think that we got anything yesterday, other than I think it's real progress that President Trump did actually shake hands and talk with them and meet with them. But let's be clear about this. That was offered to every president that we've had. It was offered to Obama. It was offered to both Bushes. It was offered to Clinton. So he's just the first president to say yes. So I hope this works out. I hope that we get some progress done there. But I got to think that the potential for yesterday to be nothing and the potential for yesterday to be something is absolutely equal.
Warren, yesterday in kind of conversations around the workplace, people discussing what they kind of think it is, I cringed because I was hoping I wasn't hearing someone say this name, but the name Neville Chamberlain came up with this whole summit that happened.
Who's the idiot that said that?
Well, I'm just saying it has come up, and so where I don't think this is necessarily the equal playing field. However, what would you say to that?
I would say whoever said that is an absolute idiot and probably has never read any history. What this is to me, and I'm giving my opinion and my opinion only.
That's why we pay such a generous contract.
But let's understand that my opinion is usually right on these kind of things.
For all of us.
That for the first time in decades, we have a president there who is looking at the end results going in. And it's like somebody who goes out there and says, we're going to start here and this is where we're going to end. If you're going to do a business deal, we're going to try to merge with that company. We're going to try to buy that company or whatever. And then you start and you progress to it. Government never does that. They used to, but they haven't in decades. We go into these wars now without any definitive way of definitive goal. Nobody says we're going to win anything. We just go there. Well, let's start here and see what happens. And that's the way all of these negotiations have been traditionally for the last several years, a few decades. But now we got a little bit different. We have somebody who says this is what has to happen at the end of this. North Korea has, we need to make sure that we denuclearize them. We do some of these things. This is what has to happen. So here's where we're going to start, and this is what we're going to do. And so at least we have made that first step, and it's an ongoing process. These things, they happen a little at a time or a lot at a time, but they happen in stages. You don't just jump out there all at once and say, well, we're going to go do this. And as far as having a meeting behind closed doors with nobody there, I say, thank God. That's about what needs to happen, because if you let other people get in there and all the stuff start coming out, then it's just like the old party game around the room. When first person whispers to this one, who whispers to that one, the next thing it is just totally distorted. And so, you got a deal going between two leaders, just like it was with Reagan and Gorbachev. How did they get along so well? It's because Reagan says, what does your wife call you? He says, Mike. He said, well, mine calls me Ron, so why don't we call each other that? And then they got along, and the whole world changed because of it.
And when did the wall come down?
It's
over a year later, when Bush 41 was president. That's when the wall came down. He called for the wall to come down when he was president, visiting there.
But Bush 41 didn't have a damn thing to do with the wall coming down.
My point exactly. It takes time for these things to really gel and to come to fruition. This is a first step. This is a roadmap. This is what we'd like to have. And they both said total denuclearization. That was number one on the list. What that means for them and what that means for us are two different things. But we have a negotiating.
Don't you have to bring South Korea into that to make sure they're agreeing with it
Well,
too?
I believe that they were brought in first. Japan, South Korea, all of the Asian partners were brought in. This has not been an overnight thing. Many people like to think that Trump, because of the way he speaks, etc., he's just flying off the cuff, that kind of thing. 20 years ago, almost 20 years ago, he wrote in a book that if this is what I would do in North Korea. In an interview at that time, he said, this is what I would do.
Yeah,
they read the book. Yeah. They know that if it all fell apart, he was going to increase the sanctions, which, by the way, he has not lifted the sanctions, and that was not part of this deal. I think that will come, yes, but that's part of the carrot. But we got the stick going, and we actually had a president that enforced the sanctions. How many ships did they interdict going into North Korea from Iran, from Russia, from China, from all kinds of places that were violating the sanctions? And that's how North Korea has gotten away with it so long, because the sanctions were never enforced. By the way, if I were the PR person for Singapore, man, you couldn't have paid for the PR.
It looked great.
Gorgeous,
it was beautiful. I'm
gorgeous.
sure
A lot of people probably saying, man, why haven't I gone to Singapore
It was
right
like
now?
The Bachelor. You could tell there were flowers that were
anyway,
never there before,
right.
but they're there now.
Right. Getting back to North Korea, they are bankrupt. Their banking system is on its butt. China's tired of bailing them out, and China doesn't want a war on their border with hordes of people flowing over. And I'll say one last thing. That soldier that defected, they found parasites in him. He was malnourished. How does a country stay in power? How does a dictator stay in power? He feeds his military and he keeps them happy. Something's going on up there. That's the only reason he came to the table, and Trump knew it.
I just want to ask y'all a quick question, and then we'll go around to each of you to kind of weigh in quickly. The word trust, after this summit happened, and one of the reporters asked, so do you trust that he, Kim, was real when you had the conversation? And Trump said, yes, I trust him. In the same briefing, he talked about all the talk about fire and fury and said, I didn't mean that at the time. I felt like I might have been a little bit foolish when I said it, but I knew I had to say it because it got us to the table today.
Well, and the other thing he said was, I could be wrong 5 years from now, but I'll never admit it. And he was laughing, and the reporters were laughing with him.
So can you really trust Kim Jong-un that he's not going to shoot off a rocket tomorrow?
I don't think Trump meant that he trusted him either.
Oh, okay. It's so weird. Stafford.
He's not as stupid as everybody thinks he is.
I'm just saying.
But that's it. The conclusion is the man is a total and complete fumbling idiot.
Keep him.
Wait, we talk about Kim Jong-un.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, if you're going to give a briefing and you say, no, I trust him.
Right. So how
do we not
have an
trust
opinion when you discredit it from the beginning?
Yeah, he's done himself no favors with his own integrity. Right, he just says one thing and does another.
And when does anybody ever put that word in the same sentence with Donald Trump, especially the news media?
Yeah.
So why? He's nothing for him to lose.
Are we in agreement on that? Like, are you admitting that he has no integrity?
I said, so who says that ever in relation to Donald Trump? They don't believe he has any integrity. The news media especially will never give him any credit for anything. So therefore, he can get away with a lot more because as the boy who cried wolf.
Is this more 3D chess?
Do you remember the little story about the boy who cried wolf? And every time the news media says, he's so bad at this, he did this, and it works out that he actually did a good thing. And so now people are thinking, can I trust the media ever to tell the truth about this man?
I think this is a great example of the lengths that people will go to justify some of the idiocy that we see, and so some of
I don't justify anything. I justify the ends. I justify the ends, not the means.
And look, it's frustrating to somebody because we've grown as a global leader through consistency in our beliefs.
Oh, please get the big one.
Through consistently,
Warren's having a heart attack.
Promoting democracy, promoting freedom, and we've made some mistakes along the way. But there are some things that we've done. When the White House says something, we usually try to stick to it, right? I'm shocked that we're sitting here going, everybody's okay with Trump's lack of integrity. Because he can say he just trusts Trump or trusts Kim Jong-un,
lack of integrity.
And then we can say, oh, well, he just didn't mean it.
He has goals. He has goals that maybe the media will never give him credit for accomplishing many of the goals, the deregulation, the freedom that he is reinstituting across the country. I think that he's doing a great job.
Warren, you want to wrap this one up?
In terms of may I please? I've got to catch my breath a little bit after what Stafford just got through saying. That first of all, Donald Trump is a pragmatist. He's going in there and he's taking pragmatic approaches to try to solve some problems that we have in this country that's been going on for a long time.
Exactly.
All you got to do is turn around and look at what's happening in the economy, and I think you can see that. As far as trust and integrity and all that, Stafford, I could care less what you think, but I know you hate him, and that's fine.
I don't hate
you
Trump.
can continue to hate him, but look at what he's getting done. And you want to start talking about the consistency of the United States foreign policy?
Laws me.
Good God Almighty.
Laws
Name
me
me the times that we have been consistently wrong. We have stabbed so many of our friends in the back around the world. I've said over and over and over, if I was a little old head of a country out here, the worst thing I could see is the United States government coming over and telling me that we are your friends and we're going to back you. You know, this has happened time after time after time after time. We have broken virtually every treaty we've ever been in with anybody, going back as far back as the Indians in this country. And to sit there and say that our consistency around the world, our foreign policy is being tarnished, good God Almighty. Our foreign policy, for the first time, we have a foreign policy that is starting to look like that there's a little bit of substance to it, and putting the United States first for change instead of putting ourselves last.
So if you say that we consistently screw over our allies, which I don't agree with, but I would say that right now we are screwing over our allies. Look at what we're doing. Look what we're doing to Canada. Look what we're doing to the European Union. People who bled with us, right?
Excuse me.
And we're dropping tariffs on because he doesn't understand that as the largest consumer of products in the known universe, we buy more than we sell, right? How silly is that? There are some things that should be changed. Yes, they shouldn't tax some of the things that we put across the border nearly as high.
When you have a preferred customer, do you give them a break on the prices? Yes, you do. They're screwing us over, and we're their preferred customer. And if you want to look at what the European Union did, the only reason the European Union came together was to compete with the United States.
So shut down all free trade.
All right, stop. You're talking about
saying totally free trade, not these tariffs.
You're sitting there talking about us screwing over our allies. You can go back in history and look at virtually every ally we had that we screwed over. What happened in Iran? What happened in Iraq?
Gaddafi.
I mean, it's leading right up to today.
Gaddafi.
What has happened to most of those countries in the Middle East that we had our friends over there? We're supporting you. Then the first chance we get, what do? We shoot them. And it just goes over and over and over. I mean, there's so many times we've gone in there and told these people, we are your friends. We're going to back you. And then in the end, we kill them. Or we support the people who go in there and overthrow them. I mean, God.
I agree with you on that.
I'm not talking about trade issues so much, but trade issues also. We have gone out there and given all this money to people around the world, propped up their economy, propped up their government, and then they turn around and they hate us. Just like Europe. What have we spent in the last 70 years in Europe?
But you act
and
like
now you've got
government...
Angela Merkel talking about we are not a good ally of Germany.
But you're doing it. You're implying that the government gave them the money. We bought their goods. Right?
Bullshit.
We bought BMWs. We bought Mercedes. We bought this stuff.
I bought it. It's all good.
Right?
No, you're wrong.
It's consumption.
Let them go. They're doing their thing.
Let me tell you something. Yeah, it's consumption, but you don't treat a good customer that way, where you put in 200 and some % tariffs on certain items like the dairy farmers. I can remember 30 years ago, the timber industry, terrible tariffs from Canada.
Well, you got to go back to Jimmy Carter when he put the embargo on soybeans to Russia.
Well, it just goes on
and
on.
The soybean farmers have still not gotten over it.
They're hit again right now.
That's government.
Russia's buying soybeans from Asia now instead of us because of our tariffs.
Of course.
Right? So now we're hitting the farmers again.
They don't produce enough.
Do what?
We produce more.
All right, we're going to leave this one here. While we were able to get in the trade back and forth, allies and Trump Kim all in one. That's why we have the best in the business here sitting on our panel. Wingin' It Wednesday is back after this.
And that's why we call it Wingin'.
Well, the good news is no traffic crashes, no breakdowns to report to you right now. Just make sure that you're buckling up and keeping it safe out there. Our traffic update brought to you by Compassion International. You can't change the whole world, but you can change the world for a child in poverty. Choose your child now at compassion.com/radio.
7:49 now at News Talk 96.5. KPEL, you guys got a little out of hand the last break. We went a little bit long.
I'm sorry, Warren. I should not have hit you.
We got
High five. You're hilarious.
All right, so
I won't do it again.
We have reached the final segment of this week's Wingin' It Wednesday show, and we want to talk about Ohio, where Ohio's practices of where to purge or where to start with purging voter rolls, whether it's people who don't live there anymore or people who live at a different address and have re-registered, etc. went ahead and the Supreme Court took a look at it. The Supreme Court sided with the state and said it doesn't violate any federal laws at the end of the day, and it doesn't necessarily make it harder for someone to vote because many of the people who were taken off just didn't live there anymore. Warren, we'll start with you on this one. Your thoughts and even if you have any insight, how other states clean up their voter rolls, because as long as people keep registering, you're going to have lower and lower turnout, supposedly, because all those people aren't actually going to vote.
I don't care about turnout. That
all right then, Carol.
No.
No.
what I would much rather see is educated votes, and that used to be, if you didn't vote for so many years, you automatically removed from the voter rolls, and that we've since gone out there and did all the voter registrations where that now they do at the DMV on some places and all of that stuff, and it used to be also that you had to be a citizen of the United States to vote. And some states have actually changed that. And California is one of them. And, those kind of things just, they got to be straightened up. We probably still have World War I veterans voting in Louisiana. Maybe even got a few Civil War veterans voting here. And it's obscene, and it's horrible that anytime you have voter fraud, you are denying some people their vote because their vote doesn't count when the fraudulent votes come in and overpower those. And that that it used to be, and I think it still is to a big point, that it was those larger cities where you had these political machines in there who just basically ran everything, kind of like it was Leander Perez in Plaquemine Parish when Huey Long ran and got 4,000 something votes out of Plaquemine Parish when they only had 1,200 registered voters in the parish, and we just laughed about it, and that and those things are really sad. And so you get in those big cities the way it's always been, the way it's been in a lot of them, where those political machines were, and they generally were always Democrats, and that they would go in there, and you had the bosses around there that we called it those days the stuff in the ballot box, where they would put the votes in before time, put a piece of cardboard over them, and then when the people voted, their ballots went on top of the cardboard, and then when they got to the courthouse to be counted, they just took the ones off the top of the cardboard, burned them, and counted their vote, the votes they put in there, and that when you do that, you're denying people's votes.
I'm a gentleman, so I wasn't going to interrupt you, but I did some quick Googlage. The California thing,
thank you,
is that well, I'm not taking sides. I'm just saying, California, if you're an illegal immigrant, you can get a driver's license. That was conflated with a story saying California was now registering you when you got a driver's license. However, if you're an illegal immigrant, you can't be registered to vote there. That's the law. That was misreported when it happened, a conflation of two different stories. So I'll say that, and we'll move on to Carol.
I also think they're registering people there to vote, and they weren't even checking their citizenship.
Correct.
And I do believe that is a fact.
California has stated.
Well, you can believe what you want to believe, I guess.
Well, but do you have the answer to that question? Do we know?
Well, there's a whole story explaining how the two combined, and
right.
how the
but
story about.
Well, who wrote the story?
Well, and one does not necessarily negate the other.
was the original
Fake news.
place.
Because what I'm saying,
right,
what I'm
fake
questioning is, have they also done stories to find out whether or not people have gone and voted? Okay, here's my name. Nobody checked my citizenship.
And there are stated instances where they have said they will allow
it's a great
illegals
question.
to vote in local and state elections in California. They are not allowed to vote in federal. And Judicial Watch uncovered all of this.
I think this is here's the scary part that we have as someone who does news. What news source is good enough to prove anyway, either way, one or the other? Unfortunately, we live in a situation, I think, right now where if the New York Times reports it, oh, well, of course they're going to do it that way. Oh, well, then if it's this website, of course.
No, I think you just shouldn't stop asking questions.
Oh, I totally agree. But you also have to accept when someone gives you answers.
Well, let me say something. Judicial
I guess
Watch
that's
has
my only
never
thing.
been proven incorrect about any of the suits that they have brought. And they bring them to court, and they get validated in court. And so, therefore, I do trust Judicial Watch as a source because they go strictly by the law and by the numbers. All right, now, Heritage Foundation, another group that I do trust because they've done a lot of research on this. And what they found out is, and these are the stats, 1,132 proven voter fraud cases around the country, 983 convictions, but they're only civil penalties. So people will do voter fraud all day long.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as the Heritage Foundation, they quote the National Commission on Federal Election Reform. They have stated the problem is not the magnitude of voter fraud in close or disputed elections, and there are many of those, as we know. A small amount of fraud can make the margin of difference, and that's where Supreme Court has concurred with that assessment. I'm just reading from the story here. The Supreme Court has concurred, and in fact, there have been several cases where elections have been overturned because they had proven instances of voter fraud. There are any number of ways to carry this off.
Yeah, and the Secretary of State obviously wants anyone to report when they see something weird.
That's why I say in Louisiana's case, Tom Shedler, for all his problems that he had, he ran a good Secretary of State's office, and I can only pray that Louisiana gets the same type of Secretary of State, ran a good commercial division and ran a good elections division.
All right, Stafford, you can wrap this one up for us.
The only person being prosecuted by the Trump administration for voter fraud is somebody who voted for Trump twice. The lady mailed in a ballot and forgot she did it and turned up at the polls and voted again. There is zero evidence of widespread voter fraud. There is a conspiracy theory that because Trump lost the popular vote, that there was somehow 3.1 million votes cast illegally. It's complete BS. Guys, just Google it and look at the
yes,
news.
Yes, we trust Google, don't we? We do. We trust Snopes, too, as well.
There's actual data on here. You don't have to go to right-wing sites like the Heritage Foundation or any of these crazy right-wing publications that are out there. There's actual...
we're crazy right-wing, but all the liberal sites are really good.
There's actual legitimate news sources out there. You can look at the numbers yourself.
Fake news, legitimate news.
Define the two. It's a debate we're going to have for years and years and years. We might not waste our Wednesday morning on it right now.
Amen.
All right. Wednesday, June 13th, 2018, guys. Appreciate your time today, as always.
The fact that y'all didn't sing Happy Birthday to me on air is it's insulting.
Happy birthday.
And it would have been more insulting if we sang.
Happy birthday to
I get I'm the pariah.
Happy birthday, dear Stafford.
There we go.
Happy birthday to you. That was my lounge lizard rendition.
All I wanted.
All right.
And with that.
What was your birthday?
Were you around?
I'll be back.
37.
Yes.
37.
All right, listen to Kel this afternoon. The Ross Report starting at 2.
Yeah.
No fake
stay with
news
us.
on the Ross Report.
We're back next on News Talk 96.5 KPEL.
Is that a wrap?
That's a